Talking to the interagency grizzly bear management group, they were listed for good cause. We want to preserve a stable population of the grizzly bear. But according to the biologists, they've reached the maximum carrying capacity of the ecosystem 20 years ago. The Endangered Species Act is a little like Hotel California. You can check out, but you can never leave. So we petitioned the federal government for delisting of the grizzly bear almost 2 years ago. We got some positive feedback earlier this year that they are considering our petition. Now, the good thing about the federal government is it takes a long time to do anything. So that's under process, and if that, it's really, we should be celebrating this conservation win. We modified our state regulations related to grizzly bears this last legislative session to align and meet federal standards, the same way we did when the wolves were delisted. In preparation, if they are delisted, we've got all the tools in place here in the state. So, and that bars hunting of grizzly bears for a period of time, 5 years, but it gives the state more management tools to make sure that we can sustain a healthy population without having bureaucrats in Washington do it.
Thank you, because I know it's been 20 some years since Fish and Wildlife has said they could be delisted, but yet obviously litigation groups keep suing stuff all the time, and that makes it hard.
We petitioned U.S. Wildlife Service in December 2 years ago. They were supposed to get back to us in 90 days. It took them a year and 90 days. And they said, we're considering your proposal, and it'll take about a year. So this is not a short-term project, but it's we have great biologists at FWP. They're tasked with doing this. We'd like to have some more management tools, particularly to deal with some of the problem bears that are. I know, Matt, you had a first-hand experience with one of those problem bears.
Is that close?
Yeah. Who else has a question? Yeah.
One of our chief, and I'd like to echo what he said about the gravel pit. I don't think we need it, and we shouldn't have it.
I agree. Well, if there's a permit that's submitted, you'll have a chance to have your voice heard.
Right. I'm not going to talk about housing. We're building a lot of housing. We have a hot real estate market. But we can't build worker housing without some subsidies. I'm a small-time developer, and I know that you can maybe service the upper end of the middle, but not the lower end.
Mm-hmm.
If we have a surplus, I think there's no better place to put it than that. And frankly, it needs some kind of help or some kind of subsidy to make it viable.
Okay. So we're really ahead of the rest of the country in the actions we've already taken. I'd like to point out a couple of things. In fact, a year ago, I formed a housing task force. It was bipartisan. And working with the legislature, we really ran the table. In fact, there's an article this month in the Atlantic. The Atlantic's not always that friendly, but they actually called it the Montana miracle and highlighted that we're ahead of many other states. And one of the pieces we put in place was exactly what you're talking about. We set aside out of the surplus $100 million specifically to help local municipalities put in new water and sewer, but only if they do workforce housing. Because right now that's borne by the developer.
How do you define workforce housing?
More than 10 units per acre. So it's called the Homes Act, and that was signed into law.
Divided by density, not by income.
Correct. Yep. So that was one thing we did. The second thing we did was we changed the zoning so that anywhere you can have a single family home, you can now build a duplex. The third thing we did was now any home in Montana can now add an auxiliary dwelling unit. That could be something over the garage, or a tiny home in the backyard, or a basement apartment. So it doesn't matter what the local zoning is. This was a delicate question about how heavy-handed are we. We like to use carrots more than sticks. But like in a community like Missoula, they didn't have any multifamily zoning anywhere. So we said now anywhere you can have a single family home, you can have a two-family home. It was kind of an interesting coalition of people that don't want sprawl. We're on the same side of some of the free market conservatives because these zoning rules really will create more opportunities there. And the issue, we basically have a supply problem, and as you know, I mean, we just.
Well, we also have an economic problem in that the cost of land and the cost of construction, so even if you provide the utilities or the density, won't do the job. I mean, it'll provide for the upper end of the middle, but not the lower end of the.
The other thing we did was we recruited a business in Dubuque that's going to be building manufactured homes here. They're going to employ 450 people there. They made an $80 million investment, and that's going to help as well. I would encourage you to look. If you look at the website is Governor's Housing Task Force, again, and that Atlantic article that's in this novel.
Still, think you need to subsidize construction.
There's not enough money in the budget. There's just not enough money. So that's why we created the incentive for higher density. Yeah.
Great plans in the future to do anything for property tax?
I'm glad you asked.
It's killing us.
It is killing us.
It's something based on sale. My neighbor's place, I want to live in Gardner, Montana. My probably went up $1,300 this year, just a matter of a couple, 3 years since I started looking at people.
Well, the bills aren't out yet, so we don't know exactly what the rates are. The property taxes are a function of local spending and voter-approved mill levies. We're required by statute to appraise property at its market value. We did a couple of things this last session. One is very sensitive to property taxes are too high. That's why next week you can apply for a property tax rebate. That's a one-time fix. It's $675 this year, $675 next year. In addition, we changed the law, working with the legislature this last session, and we put $120 million in permanent property tax relief back by changing the way, it's technical, but the way the 95 mills is allocated for schooling, allowing county commissioners to use some of that money for reducing pension obligations. In addition, we put $100 million specifically earmarked for county roads and bridges, which is one of the big expenses that county commissioners have. And we structured it so that we can get a 9-to-1 match out of the feds. So that would be about $800 or $900 million going into local county coffers for road and bridge maintenance. So all those offset property taxes. The state doesn't get property taxes. It goes to the local communities. So, but the additional permanent relief has to come by increasing transparency and accountability for long-term spending at the local level, because that's where the increases are coming from. Park County does a pretty good job. We have some other counties who will remain nameless, whose spending has far exceeded population growth and inflation by like a lot. And there was some effort in this last legislature to rein in some of those communities, and we didn't get it over the finish line. So we'll try again. I'm also a fan of providing preferential property tax rates for Montanans who are in their primary residence. And that's something we're looking at for next session. Okay, so those are the sorts of things we're doing. Good. Last question. Yes?
On that same taxing budget, how do we capture the revenue off these tourists? Because we're missing, we're completely missing.
Well, they're coming into.
I mean, we're missing them on a tax base. I mean, I go to Phoenix, I rent a car, it costs me 33% by the time I get out of the airport, just for the car.
Yeah.
Then I
So
pay all the sales tax.
you know, our economy benefits from people that are spending money here. People that buy second homes, if we adopt this plan I'm talking about, people with secondary homes would pay higher property taxes. We do have a bed tax every time they rent a hotel room. The state gets revenue from that. There are local resort taxes for gateway communities and such. So there's a number of things that are done. It's taxes, as you know, are complicated.
Yeah.
Some argue for a sales tax. I will tell you, that's been on the ballot 3 times in Montana, and anyone that's ever advocated for it, has not been in their position for very long. So I oppose a sales tax in large part because Montanans oppose a sales tax.